Hello, and welcome to a very special webinar, Now What? Communicating During Times of Crisis and Uncertainty. I'm Liz Wainger, president of Wainger Group, and for more than 20 years, my firm has been helping companies and nonprofits figure out how to communicate effectively internally and externally, and in good times and in tough times. And we are certainly facing some tough times right now. We are in uncharted territory. I don't think any of us have experienced a situation that is moving so fast, so pervasive, and so uncertain as what we're experiencing with the COVID-19 virus crisis. And, in times like this, what we do know from past experience in crisis communication is that when you are talking to your stakeholders and you're talking to them frequently and in the right way, that goes a long way in how we get through and recover from a crisis down the road. So what I want to do in the time that we have together is to share with you some tips and strategies and some ways to be thinking about how you can be communicating during these uncertain and troubling times. So when we're experiencing situations like this, we probably feel like this woman. We just want to go crawl under a rock and wish it were over. Like, call me when it's done. But we know we can't do that. We have businesses to run. We have people who depend on us. And we need to be more like the woman on the right and sort of adopt a calm, rational approach to be able to pause for a minute and get a plan together and figure out how we're going to manage through this. So there are basically 4 phases in crisis communication and crisis management: plan, do, check, and improve. Now, chances are, let's talk about planning. Chances are you have a crisis plan. And if you do, I'm sure it didn't include global pandemic. Unless you're the World Health Organization or a health organization, you probably didn't even imagine something like this. Nonetheless, a lot of what's in your plan is probably very adaptable, and you can work off of that. Now, if you don't have a crisis plan, it's okay. It's never too late to put one together. And what we're going to need to do now is plan in short-term chunks: 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And then once we're through, and we will come out on the other side of this crisis, then we can plan more broadly for other kinds of business continuity issues that will arise in your business under normal times. But for the moment, let's think about it. So what do you need to be doing as you're planning right now? Well, the first thing is to understand and think about best and worst case scenarios. None of us want to think about the absolute worst case scenarios, but we have to think about them. What if this happens? What if that happens? Because if you can think about it and plan for it, and at least have some idea of, well, this is what we might do, you're going to be better prepared. You're not going to be just feeling like you've been hit by a wave and knocked down by it. So when you're planning your scenarios, you need to identify, what are your risks? What are potential deficiencies? Where are there gaps in our organization or in our resources? And you need to be assembling who's going to be the team that manages through this crisis. Now, chances are, again, if you have a crisis communications plan, you probably have identified a crisis leadership team. Typically, the people on that team include your CEO, your chief operating officer if you have one, whoever is in charge of finance, communications person, legal, and if you have a risk management group, probably they would be involved, as well as your programming or product development people as well. And so identify people from all of those areas in your organization and they are the crisis point team. At the same time that you're establishing this team or activating this team, understand what your crisis protocols and procedures are. How are you going to operate now as an organization? One type of protocol or procedure might be a media policy, for example. If you have a media policy about who can talk to the media, bring it back out again, refresh it. And if you don't have one, then create one that says, if we get calls from reporters or bloggers, this is how we handle them. You get certain information, you tell the reporter you're going to call them back, and then you direct that to whoever you've designated as your chief spokesperson, usually your communications or someone in the communications team. So those are some of the things that you need to be thinking about as you're planning. Scenarios, risks, where you may have gaps, assigning responsibilities, and understanding how you're going to function in this new normal. Then you get to the do. And let me say that even though I've identified these as 4 discrete functions, they're not always sequential. You're going to be doing these all at the same time. You're going to be flying the plane as you're building it, or riding the bike, whichever analogy you like to use. So even though I'm presenting them sequentially, you're going to need to be doing these. There's going to be a push and pull among these various things. You'll be planning, and then things are going to change. You're going to have to adjust your plan. So when we get to the do or the responding part, again, identify a crisis leader, someone who is going to be, who activates the team, who calls the meetings. And it may be your CEO, and it may not be. You really have to figure out who's best equipped to do that, who has the experience to do that. And you're also going to need to designate a spokesperson. And the crisis leader and the spokesperson may not be the same person. When you're selecting a spokesperson, that person has to be comfortable dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty, has to be comfortable speaking in front of other people, and being able to think on the fly, because you're going to be getting lots of questions. If you do town hall meetings, internal meetings, and they may get asked a lot of questions about what you're going to be doing, that person has to be able to roll with the punches and be comfortable in those kinds of situations. You're going to be continually assessing your situation. You're going to be looking at what's coming in externally and what you're learning from your internal teams, and you're going to have to be monitoring that all the time. And your first priority must always be on health and safety. You've got to deal with the health and safety issues before you can deal with your business continuity issues. So if you have someone, for example, in your company who's tested positive for the virus, for example, you have to manage first how you're going to make sure that they get the care that they need, their insurance is working, all of those things, and then how you're going to protect the safety of the people that they work with, any clients that they may have come in contact with. You have to deal with that first, because if you don't deal with that right, that's going to affect your business continuity. You've got to activate that crisis leadership team at the right times, and you also got to make sure that there's discipline in your company, or in your organization, about commenting and deferring to that company spokesperson. So as you're in this active doing mode, you're also going to be checking what you're doing. And it's good to establish some checklists. That provides a sense of structure at a time when we feel that there isn't any structure and everything feels chaotic. You may need additional help. You may need additional resources, whether that comes from other departments that maybe right now, because things have slowed down so dramatically, maybe they're not as busy, so you can deploy people within your organization, or you may need some outside help, outside legal help, outside communications help. Sometimes it's good to have outside partners who can be more objective and can look at what you're doing and provide insights that maybe you can't see. And it's important to constantly keep the communication flowing, and we're going to talk more about that as we move forward. And the last part of this is the improving factor. You're going to constantly be assessing, is this working? Is this not working? If it's not working, then you're going to have to make adjustments. to what you're doing. And so always look at how you can be improving even while you're in the moment. Again, you got to understand who are all the stakeholders that you have to be communicating with. And that includes your employees, your teams, and their families, especially at a time like this. If an employee is worried about a family member being on site or being away for long periods of time because they have to help you, you've got to make sure that you're communicating with them, because that's going to help your employee be as productive as possible during this process. Partners, contractors, subcontractors, associates, the public health authorities, the state, federal, and local agencies, that regulators, other people that you deal with, you need to be having a plan to get information as well as to share information as you might need to. The media, you may want to communicate messages broadly. Some nonprofits, for example, you may have some great programs to help people in your community and you want to get the word out. At the same time, the media may be contacting you. What's the impact on your industry? And you need to be ready for those kinds of calls. And obviously clients, customers, members, supporters. And again, I've made this as a circle because this is an ongoing flow of communication. One thing I do want to stress is that any email, any communication you have to employees internally, think of it, if it's more than 2 people, think of it as a public document, even to sharing to another person. In the age of social media, this stuff can be shared on LinkedIn and Twitter. And just because information is delivered over here doesn't mean it's going to stay over there. So be very mindful of what you're saying, and that even in an email, something that you may think is a private communication can be shared. So be mindful of that in your messaging. So here's I hope a kind of simple way of approaching your communications. You want to convey, you want to act, you want to respond, you want to emote. And when you do that, you're going to be showing people that you care. So when we talk about conveying, right now, this is about information. People have questions. Your various stakeholders are wondering, is our business going to stay open? Is our building still open? What do I do if? So you want to be presenting information that answers the questions that your stakeholders might be asking. And you want to make sure you stick to the facts, especially because this is a fluid situation. You share what you know at the time, and you do not speculate on the future. Very important to convey information, fact-based information, and sharing just what you know. It's very important too that you don't overload your audiences with too much information. You're better off sending a series of emails that may be a little bit shorter, that deal with specific things, rather than trying to include everything. Because remember, if you're stressed, your stakeholders are stressed in a situation like that. And there's just so much information that people can absorb at any given time. Act, okay? And we talked about planning. So you make the plan, but then you have to communicate what it is that you're doing. So many times people make the plan and then they forget the other part of it, which is to let people know what you're doing. And again, planning for the best and worst case scenarios is important. And again, continually monitoring and updating your situation, and within your company, within your organization, designate people who can go out and monitor certain, distribute the task. Who's going to be looking at the CDC website? Who's going to be looking, listening into the live stream briefings, right? So that you can bring that back into your organization. At the same time, you need to be monitoring what's going on within your organization and how employees are feeling. You want to provide pathways that your stakeholders can continue to connect. And you've got to tell them what is the best way to communicate with you. We have so many platforms right now, and it can get overwhelming. I have to check my email. I got to check my Slack. I got to check my Facebook. So if you're going, where you're delivering information, be clear about where people can go to get the information that they need, and be very careful about promising things that you may not be able to keep. If you're going to make a promise, for example, if you say, we will update you tomorrow, you need to update them when tomorrow comes. Even if you don't have any more information, you say, I said we were going to update you. I don't have any more information. We are still working, right? Even when you don't feel like you don't have anything new to say, you keep communicating. It tells people, I haven't forgotten you. We are working on it. We're in this situation. I just don't have anything more to share with you. And that in a funny way can be very comforting. When people don't know things, nature abhors a vacuum, and people will fill in what they do not know. Respond. So you putting information out, now you need to respond and listen to your stakeholders, listen to their concerns, understand what's going on with them. It's incredibly important. When you take an action, explain why you've taken it and then what it is that you're doing. Right now, for example, if you have people that have tested positive for the virus, you need to explain what actions you're taking, and also that you're taking them because this is what is recommended by the CDC or our local health authority, or this is what our governor has declared that this is, and you're following it that way. That's the why of what you're doing. Or we have decided because out of abundance of caution, or because we don't feel we can carry on any, right now in the way that we are limiting. We're hearing this from grocery stores that people are limiting the amount of toilet paper that people can access, right? Because people are going crazy with that. But explain why you're doing it. Don't just say, okay, you can only have one. We're doing this so that there's enough for everybody. Now, you may think that that's clear and that's understood. Don't assume that. Always explain kind of what you're doing. Again, present your actions based on facts, and check in regularly with customers, clients, and supporters. I got an email today from a women's group that I'm a part of where they said, hey, we can't meet. How would y'all feel about just doing a check-in call? Let's get on Zoom, let's do a check-in call and just find out how we're all doing. Boy, does that, reinforce the value of that group and those women to me. What a great thing. And then set expectations, as we said, for when people will hear from you. Emote, be human. Okay, so while we're delivering all our facts, while we're telling people what we're going to do, remember that we are human. Acknowledge the stress and this disruption and the uncertainty, and express concern for the stakeholders' health and well-being to show that you care. I saw an email from an academic program that had to cancel something that they were doing, and this is the only time that people would be able to do that. And so the director of that program, as she was communicating that they were going to have to cancel it, everybody understands it, talked about how heartbreaking it was, how difficult it was for her to make this decision, how much it pained her, and here's why we had to do it. And it was an email, somebody else who was on the chain, responded back, gosh, this makes me want to cry, right? But you empathize and you feel, and it reminds us, it connects us to our humanity, and we never want to lose that during these stressful times. And now I'm just going to give you a quick 8 commandments for crisis communication to keep in mind. Couldn't come up with 10, so we have 8. So here we go. Before you speak, be sure. Develop clear messages and stick to them. Now is not the time to be cute. Now is not the time to overload your messages with lots of technical jargon. Be clear, get to the point, and be consistent. Now, you will have to shift. You may have to shift your messaging as events change. But what you don't want to be doing is having one side of the organization talking about one thing and the other side saying something completely different, or that's contradictory. You want to be speaking with one voice with your organization. So I always like this: say what's needed and no more. And what we find when people are confronted with stressful situations, it's like they go into a confessional and they feel like they got to say everything. Even, so a situation I'm thinking about is maybe people are asking you about, will we have to lay off people? And you're probably discussing that. And you probably even may have a plan for who's going to be laid off. But you don't necessarily want to share that right now until you're ready to actually announce that there are layoffs. You don't want to sugarcoat it and say you're not thinking about layoffs, but you don't have to deliver the entire plan until you're ready to do that. You don't have to confess, you know, what you need to do. So and it's important, you don't want to say, no, we're not planning to do any layoffs. Well, we hope it doesn't come to that. We're looking at all options. Everything's on the table, and we'll keep you posted as to what our plans are. It will depend on how events unfold. But again, you don't need to deliver the entire plan. Again, identify one spokesperson and defer to that spokesperson. Don't comment on rumors. And we know there's lots of rumors flying around. I heard, you're going to hear, I heard that so-and-so. You've got to be very disciplined, especially the crisis leadership team. You may have heard those rumors, that some of those rumors may actually be true. You don't comment on rumors. And you can just say that. Look, that's a rumor. I really am not going to comment on a rumor, and just leave it at that. Never, never lie. It's okay if you don't know something. It's okay if you haven't decided something. And it's okay if you can say, I just can't talk about that right now. But if you lie, eventually the truth is going to come out, and it will erode your credibility and trust. And right now, trust is so important when we're under stressful situations. Mind the time. So there's a dance right now between the urgency of getting information out, the rapidity through which events are occurring, and at the same time, to be responsible. So you've got to find that right balance, and you've got to respond when something happens. You are going to have to respond quickly. In the communications business, when a reporter calls and they're on deadline, you've got to respect that deadline. And so you've got to get back to people. If people need to know things, you've got to get back to them. And if you don't know the answer, or you don't have the information, at least get back to them to tell them that you don't have it, or you're not going to have it. So be mindful, respond to deadlines, but don't let deadlines impede rational, good, responsible action. And lastly, the Brits had it right. Keep your cool. Take a deep breath. When we are overwhelmed by emotion, we cannot make good decisions. And this may be the most important aspect of this at all. There's a tendency to want to, get out there and say things, but take the time, pause, be like the woman in the blue jacket earlier, in the earlier slide, who kind of had this Zen mode. You've got to keep your cool. And so here is just a summary of some of the things that we've talked about today. Communicate frequently, be brief, get to the point, stick to your facts, be clear about what you know and what you don't, develop clear and consistent messages, provide updates as events change, be human, stay calm, don't speculate on rumors, stick to the present, don't lie ever, because trust is a valuable commodity. Don't get overly cute, don't make promises you can't keep, don't use jargon or overly technical language, don't overload your audience, don't editorialize or politicize, again, stick to the facts, and don't panic, because fear spreads like wildfire. And then the last thing is, in any good crisis communications plan and program, draft your statements in advance. As you're planning your scenarios or what ifs, develop the statement for how you'd communicate it. It may not be exactly how it ends up going, but at least you'll have something to work with whenever that thing happens. And you won't be thrown into a panic like, oh, we have a reporter who's called us. And what do we say? Well, at least you have something that you can start with. And those statements are going to be, what are we doing? What have we learned? You know, and then your updates. So typically that's the kinds of statements. And I've just pulled out some phrases that you may want to be considering. We want to let you know how we're working to keep our customers and employees safe in response to the coronavirus outbreak. I want to let you know what we at X company are doing. To respond to the coronavirus outbreak, we are postponing, canceling until further notice. And then these are challenging and stressful times, and our hearts go out to those who are most affected by this unprecedented crisis. Just to give you a flavor of some of the kinds of things that you can include in your communication. I hope the tips and information that we've provided here are helpful to you. Please reach out to me at liz@waingergroup.com. And if you'd like, we can arrange a free consultation to help you think through what it is that you might need to do. Reach out to me by email and I can send you a link to my schedule. And I can also send you these slides as well. So good luck, stay well, be well, and communicate well.